doing? What day is it? Okay. And, okay, I'll put this over here, that over there, and this here. Make sure my audio is on. That looks like it's on. Turn this up a little bit. Okay, and Diana, just give me a thumbs up that you can hear me there on the live stream. I think everything's going through. And here we go with our weekly review, starting with Mark.
Hello, my name is Marcus Tinney, and this is the indoor and out.
Okay, there's Mark. Hold on.
I have the audio fixed this time.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Fool me this time.
No, it's because turn the music down. Okay, so now that's up. Here we go. Once again, introducing Mark.
My name is Marcus Tinney, and this is the indoor and outdoor Blender project part 2. Here I have my outdoor scene in both rendered and in wireframe view. I added the 2 new buildings, which I made like a wacky, colorful design to show I know how to use inset and outset. And it's also just kind of contrasts the like perfect nature of everything else, I assume. I'm really happy that I finally got to do like the autumn fall scene with the trees, giving them more of like red, brown, yellow, orange, like those kinds of colors, as well as these individually modeled rocks that I made. And using weight paint, I put them on the sides instead of in the middle, so there's plenty of room for even more buildings to go here, whether they look normal like log cabins or just wacky, colorful buildings. And in the indoor scene, I added the backface calling, so no matter where you look, you can always see the walls just up here, but you're always able to see inside, including the button not being seen, but only from certain angles can you really see it. I wasn't able to add any new objects because I wasn't entirely expecting this scene I wasn't expecting there to be more added to the scene because I really put as much as I possibly can into this. So I added some bevels to stuff like the desk here, the speaker underneath the desk, the fan, as well as a very, very little bit on the cupcake that gives the polygonal look a very smooth look. And I also had to make sure it didn't go anywhere crazy with like, because the bevel modifier would not work with how narrow this material was at the top of the candle. So I had to choose where I wanted the bevel to actually happen. And another thing I'm really happy with is rounding out the lights and the lamp part of the light as well. I was pretty happy with that. And of course, it looks amazing in rendered view. I'm really happy with that. But I'm really excited to work on even more scenes, and I'm excited to learn even more like little tips and tricks in Blender to really improve my workflow. But overall, that's all I had to share. I don't really have any questions, so bye-bye for now.
Cool. Looks great. Yeah, everything looks great. Yeah, I
Hello,
like having
my
these
name is Marcus.
2 contrasting styles of buildings next to each other. That's interesting. And your indoor scene looks really good. The tree issue, I don't think I broadcast this last time. Let me just put this on tape for everybody. We don't need this right now. Yeah, so here, where's my thing? Here, there's my plane. There's my trees. Yeah, allow me to draw your attention to the fact I have not turned my zoom tool on yet, which I do on this stream every time because I can't. It's the first one in the morning. And at home I have Zoom It in my startup because I use it just constantly, even when I'm not presenting.
There's one thing I could mention about my log cabin that I didn't need to go over in the video.
Uh-huh.
Because I didn't build my log cabin with arrays and I like manually put the cylinders up.
Uh-huh.
So at that randomization of like kind of that man-made look,
Uh-huh.
I just kind of grabbed each individual log and just kind of rotated them slightly to give it a little bit more like diversity to make it more like man-made. So it's not like perfect cylinders stacked on top of each other.
Yeah. So that's really important to understand, right? The array, what makes the array and the scatter-on surface, right? The fact that you can apply these things at scale to tens or hundreds or thousands or perhaps millions of objects at once, right? But the log cabin, I just thought it was a good, obvious one to use an array for as we were learning about the array. But, you know, it's kind of on the border of, you know, could you just Shift D a bunch of cylinders and make it happen for that scale of a log cabin? Yeah, definitely. And then you could just directly edit them, just randomly move them. And so it's important to realize that I'm trying to point this out so that people understand the power of using these tools, but this is always an option, right? In terms of, you know, there's been plenty of times, you know, this is how my brain works. I think about doing things at scale. My personal artwork is hundreds or thousands of things flying around doing stuff. But here, there's been plenty of times where I've tried to devote so much time into doing it procedurally that I could have just gotten it done in this fashion in that same amount of time. But I made myself feel better about it by telling myself like, oh, I'd figured out the tool if I want to do this again in the future, right? But am I just compensating? Maybe. Anyway, back here, this is something that I didn't point out before, and some of you may want to use to more or less effect, is that by default, the scatter-on surface has align rotation checked, okay? Which means that if you have any sort of a part of your landscape that has a steeper slope, you get these trees, right? Where they're kind of pointed off in the different area. And, you know, like maybe not desirable. If you turn off align rotation, they'll be aligned, they'll be rotated however the object is in the, that you put in the scatter. Okay, so in this case, straight up and down. And so that, you know, addresses this issue, and in this particular instance, it makes the trees grow more as trees would, you know, up towards the sun. But now they're all directly up and down. And so you can sort of compensate for that by using the randomize rotation. And so here you can start to give them a little bit of variation so that now they're not all pointed straight up and down, right? And so there's a bunch of the projects like that where some people created stuff on a hill and there's more to it there. And so, yeah. This one, align rotation, this is, you know, a fairly important one in terms of like, do we want all of these things to align to the orientation of the, in this case, when we said align rotation, it was taking the up direction, right? And up in Blender is which axis, Alejandro? Yeah, that one right there, I typed it too early. And then it's aligning it to, Alejandro, what? The what angle of the face that it's being scattered on?
What angle of the face?
Yeah, what do you call this angle that's at a perpendicular degree to the face?
Oh my god,
It starts with an N, ends with ormal. Normal angle. Right, so if you turn on align rotation, which is on by default, it is aligning it to the normal of the surface that you have scattered upon. Right, so if we scattered these on a cube, for instance, if we were to, yeah, if we scattered them on a cube, shift A, or, there we go. And here we chose the, there you go. Right, by default, they do that. Right, they're pointing away from each face of the cube there. Right, so yeah, that was something everybody was running up against to some extent there. Okay, looks great, Mark. Good job. And MJ.
Hello. Here are my scenes I did. Here's my outdoor scene. I added a fire watch tower, and the leg looks a bit crazy, so ignore that. I added a general store, and then I added my log cabin. I added a little brick roof to it. And then for wireframe, these are how the buildings look. That's the firehouse, and then this is like the general store. And then here is the cabin I did. And then let's see here. We're gonna open up the new room I did. And I didn't add too much new furniture. I did change up some of the older ones I had in here, like these two pillows I redid because I felt like the first ones looked really boxy and weird. And for the TV, I also rounded out the corners with bevel. And then for these posters, I added 3 new ones, which are the horseshoes you can see in BoJack Horseman's room. And then for the renders, here is the render of this that I did. I chose this angle just so you could kind of like see everything. And just, yeah, mostly just to be able to see everything in the room. And this is a render I did for the forest. I chose this angle specifically so you could kind of get a glimpse at everything, such as the cabin, the firehouse, the general store, as well as the sign. So yeah, those are my stuff. See ya.
Great. Okay, good job. The things that stick out here, right? What should MJ select on the cones that are in the tree? Yeah, shade smooth, right? And when you select shade smooth, you're getting rid of what? What is the problem? The name for seeing these faces? Faceting, right? When we can see the faces like that. Okay, so here and here. So now that you know about subdivisions, you can, one possible solution here is that you solve faceting by just turning up the number of subdivisions to the point where the faces are so small that it looks continuous and smooth. And no, don't do that, right? Because then you're just unnecessarily increasing the density of the geometry, and that only makes it, less performant, but it also makes it less editable in terms of you got a lot more geometry to wrangle if you want to change anything at that point. And going through here and trying to reconfigure your room, MJ, so that it's has the reversed normals so that we can look into the room. with the back face calling, right? You had to pick this angle, and I guess we'll do a turnaround because that'll allow us to render a movie as well and do that. So we'll do that so that everybody is absolutely forced to confront back face calling. Cool. All right. Nice room there. And then, yeah, I mean, on Mark's and MJ's, right, we've been working on this for a little bit now, and there's a bunch of things over here. I would encourage you to explore organization using some collections, right, to actually start to organize all of this stuff, you know, just so that it's not a giant list of stuff. That makes it much more difficult. One good tip there is that if you have created a monolithic list of stuff over here that you can't parse, if we select something here, like the building, and then on the numpad, the point, right, the decimal point, if I press decimal point, it's zoomed to the selected object, okay? So this is also helpful if you're like, you know, in the zoomed way out into cosmic scale, this will bring us in, or if you've zoomed way in to the quantum realm, this will take you back out to normal realm. The other fun let's see. So yeah, that point, zoom to selected. It does that if the mouse is in the viewport. So again, Blender does this, most programs do this, so like depending where the mouse is matters. It does something slightly different. So it zooms at the viewport there. If you press this when the mouse is in the outliner, it'll zoom to the selected in the outliner, which is super useful for parented objects, right? Because once we parent objects to each other, holding control, then the outliner can become more confusing because you can fold things up and you don't see the children. You just see whatever's the top of the hierarchy. So, for instance, let me create something here that makes this matter. So here's we'll just make some cubes. Here's a cube. And I'm just going to Shift D this a couple times. There you go. Okay, and so I've got these cubes. I'm going to take this cube, hold down Shift, make it a child of that cube. I'm going to take this cube, hold down Shift, and make it a child of the other cube. Hold this cube, hold down Shift, and make it a child of the cube above, right? And so now if I do anything to this one, the other ones come along because I've parented them. That's how it works, right? If you change the transform of the parent, it propagates down the hierarchy to the rest of the children. However, now in the outliner, I've created a situation where if it's folded up, if this little arrow is pointed in that direction to the right, then I don't see all the children that are right here, here, and here. And so this is where that point zoom comes in handy, right? I select this, and I've selected it here, and then usually the thing over here gets highlighted, right? So that's one way that you can, if you get confused, you can tell what's what by selecting it and then seeing what's over there. And now I've selected this, and nothing is highlighted over here. The reason nothing is highlighted is because it's a child that's hidden in the hierarchy. And so if I move my mouse over to the outliner and press the numpad point, boom, it unfolds and highlights the thing right there. So that's super useful.
There's a little clue before you do that, because I don't have a number. When you look at the parent object, there's a little triangle that's slightly highlighted when you fold it up again. when you, in the outliner, like when you fold it up, you see the triangle, the little, in the outliner, the little icon for the parent cube, see that? It's got like a haze around it.
Here? Oh, that. I mean, is that because that's?
That kind of clues you in that something's going on in there because.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, like that's telling you there's 3 mesh objects that are. Yeah, but yeah, so that's permanently like that. That's not changing as you make the selection. But I don't know if that point gets transferred to the period. If we have that box checked, let's test preferences, input, emulate numpad, and so now it's like this. I'll come over here and then press that. Yeah.
It does? Okay.
Yeah, that worked.
Emulate numpad. I'm gonna try it. Okay.
Yeah, you definitely need emulate numpad. If you don't have a numpad, because you want to be able to use the numbers to flip the view around, right? So doing, when you see me doing this, it's not just because I had too much coffee and I'm randomly doing stuff with my hands, right? I'm doing this to like look at the scene from the different views.
Yeah, I have emulate numpad, but for some reason, you have to tell it how to define that period, I'm pretty sure.
Nope.
No?
Nope, that's default. Yeah. No, you have to tell it to emulate numpad. You got to check that box, right? But none of the shortcuts I've told you about are custom shortcuts. They're the default shortcuts. So you can customize the shortcuts. Proceed carefully, right? Choose wisely if you change the shortcuts, because if you looked at the menu for changing shortcuts, there's a lot of them. And where are the shortcuts? Navigation, key map, yeah. There's a lot of them. And so you can very easily end up in a situation where you change a shortcut to something that was already a shortcut for something else, and then you're just in this cascading problem of like, okay, well, I changed this one, but that was the shortcut for this other thing, so now I guess I need to change that one. You change that one to something else that's the shortcut for something, right? Like, you can see how this would be this snowballing problem then at that point. So, yeah, I need to turn that off. There you go. And there. Yeah. And good. Okay. Yeah, so a couple things to look at there, MJ. And then, yeah, the pillows do look a little less blocky. You beveled them. I would say that's step 1. In terms of making a pillow, okay. And then have we learned about anything that might make an even puffier pillow? Yeah, the sculpting tools with the subdivision surface, right? Kind of like how we made the rock, right? You rock. Right, so the rock could be a pillow. I'll go over that here in a little bit. Okay, here's Brianna. Bree. There's Bree.
Hi, this is my Blender Week 3 assignment. Before you ask where my camera is, my camera is over here, everything else is over here, so I'm not going to have it on.
Okay, and then for those of you interested, I started for a different project. I wanted to have other camera input, and so I can now endorse DroidCam. I thought is a very good program. I believe there's a free version. I bought it. It was like, it was less than $20. But it allows you to plug in, if you have an Android phone, you plug in your phone via USB to your computer, and then you can use your phone cam as the camera in OBS. And so that's, if you have a phone made within the last like 10 years, your phone camera is orders of magnitude better than your, camera that's on top of your laptop. I mean, if you have some other streaming setup, then chances are that's fine. But anyways, yeah, this I thought was really simple. Like, I don't even need to tell you how to set it up in OBS. You just click plus, DroidCam is there as an option, and you just select it, and it comes in just like the camera does. But it looks way better. Yeah, so DroidCam I've tested, and works pretty well.
Before you ask where my camera is, my camera is over here, everything else is over here, so I'm not gonna have it on. Let me click the wireframe. So this is like my little wireframe thing for my scene. Love neighbor's dog. I have currently at the moment the trees turned off, but that's where'd it go? Where'd the floor go? There it is. Like, I can have them on. I just had them off just to make sure that it's not gonna mess with the quality. This is basically what I saw anytime that I would be in wireframe. It was great.
Okay, so Bree has that random coloring turned on for wireframe, which I would encourage. Like, if you're going to present the wireframe at any point, I would encourage you to have that on. Here, 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 right? So that you can see what, right? Because otherwise it's this, and yeah, as an old, like, I can barely see this, right? That's like black on dark gray. This makes it, this should obviously be the default, but I say that now about a lot of things. This looks really good. The only thing that stands out here is just sort of like the relative scale, which you could fix, I think, fairly easy, just making the trees a little bit taller. It seems like the log cabin is like much taller than the trees, even though it's also like on a hill or whatever. But
Yeah. New objects that I basically made would just be these little guys. I remade like this stuff. That's literally just a circle, and then I made a chair. That's all of the new stuff that I made, I guess. And then kind of just due to how I made everything, I actually didn't use the back facing thing, but to like show that I know how to turn it on at least.
Okay, maybe you're going to address this here. Looks like your building is inside out, right? You turned that on and the whole building turned red. Let's see here.
Stop that.
So when the whole thing is inside out like this, chances are at some point you may have done a negative scale where you sort of, the Blender lets you do this. If you just press S to just start using the mouse to sort of drag it bigger or smaller, it's easy to drag smaller and go past 0, and essentially you're making it negative bigger, like, and so then it looks, because backface culling is off by default, you still see it, but it's actually, you know, totally inverted. It's inside out, which I think may have happened here. There we go.
Another, like, the back-facing thing, it's meant to, like, show you, like, oh, this is the inner part and this is the outer part. I love how this one turned out, because I don't know how that works.
Okay, so it's red. That looks pretty, but in this case, it's telling you something that you need to address, right? That this building's actually inside out. Because if you turn on backface culling here, this building should disappear, right? Because we're going to be seeing, or it's not going to disappear. We're going to see the back side of the, you know, like the room, right? You're going to turn the building into that kind of thing there.
If I go inside of it,
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening here. And so the other thing, diagnose this issue. Kate, what do you think happened here? Are the windows extruded in a way that is parallel to the wall? That's right. It looks like perhaps Bree used extrude, and she wanted to use extrude along normals, right? Yeah, I'll try and remember to look at that this weekend. Yeah, so you have to, by default, in Vanilla Blender, you have to switch to the other tool. It's a different tool. It says extrude along normals. It'd be better if that was the default, because that really should be, but in any instance, right? So you have two options. You can either extrude each side of the building by itself, so that all of the normal for all of these faces is the same, right, on one side of the building for a square building. And so you could do one side at a time, or you could select all of them and then use the extrude along normals there. And so, yeah, Bree, you got a bunch of issues here. The normals are inverted, and then these are not lined up.
This for some reason I did not.
Now, it's a pretty minor extrusion, so it's like, I wasn't able to even tell at this angle, but like when we come in closer there, you can tell that the tool was not quite precisely applied.
Purposefully do that. I don't know why it's doing that, but I don't really care. It works. I know what it's doing, so. And I have no more.
Okay, I beg to differ. You don't know what it's doing in this case. And yeah, it's going to work fine for rendering if you just press F12, right? But again, we have to understand what the normals are. It's going to matter more, right? Because when we bring it over to Substance Painter, it's going to look weird and not correct. Yes, Max?
So this happened in my project too, where I got to it in my video.
Okay.
Is the only way to fix it, like selecting all, then can you reverse the normals again? Did you get inverted?
Yeah.
Because I tried doing that, but it kind of just made it more messy. So I ended up saying like.
So, I mean, in this case, where here, I'll come back here. When all of the normals are wrong, like when the object is just totally inside out, if we come back to here, 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 yeah, that's on. And so we'll grab this one, we'll tab in, we'll grab everything, and we'll go to mesh, normals. There we go. And so this is totally wrong. It's totally inverted, right? Or this is what we wanted to do because we were using backface culling intentionally in the room, right? We don't want a building to look like this because it'll be inverted. Again, understanding the fundamental concept allows you to determine whether or not it's been correctly applied. Here, so when they're all wrong, you can go to mesh, normals, flip, right? So flip just, flip, if you have them all selected, there we go, mesh, normals, flips all of them. Okay, the other, if they're partial, right? So here I'll make it inconsistent. So this one, so Alt-N could be saving me some time there. There we go. Okay, so now I've got this situation where we have some that are, we have this one that's correct, and then these are wrong, right? So in this instance, usually normals recalculate outside usually does the trick. As long, especially if the geometry is not crazy complex, then that should figure it out. If that doesn't work, well then, I mean, you could just, again, remember, these are all procedural tools, right? You can select the normals one by one and fix them. Say flip, right? Because red is wrong, gray is right. You can go through and, if it doesn't do the correct thing, right? I try, so when I'm not doing that, please say something, right? I try to show you the tool that will they make the programs now, so there's oh, this thing's wrong, press this button that says fix it. And then you press the button and it fixes it. And you're like, wow, that's awesome. Technology is amazing. But as we are all aware, you can get yourself into situations where you press the fix it button and it doesn't work. It doesn't fix it, right? And in that case, you need to know enough to be able to, quote unquote, fix it by hand at that point. And now we do, right? You can select the red ones, flip those. So if you had to just manually align them all to gray, you could, right, at that point. But the recalculate outside, we've done that with other meshes, and that generally, I don't exactly know what the algorithm is doing there, but for the most part, it seems to work. So those are the two options. Does that make sense, Max? Okay. Okay, so Bree, I would go back and review the normal information there a little bit. Just check those in your notes to bring that up, sort of get up to speed on that one. And nice camera animation on your town scene there.
For the process of this, I made
Okay, this is Celeste. Yes, Celeste. So Celeste, you're still recording with just the OBS timestamp. Remember, you want to go into OBS, settings, output, or no, general, where is this setting? Advanced. And put your name here so that we can tell who's who.
a simple building, trying to understand how.
And then also, as I indicated before, here and here, turning off that align would allow us to get these trees growing up towards the sun rather than off at some sort of strange angle.
It works, how it's made. And I got used to it. I got very used to it. And then I did this, which was a fire watch house. I thought it would be good to have one of these. And for let's go like this for the editing tool. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to click this. You can see the many things I had for this. Let's go here. We have a lot more squares right here.
Faces, right? You have increased the subdivision. So the vocabulary matters here. And so that, you want to talk to other people that do this professionally, there's, a baseline vocabulary you want to be able to communicate with.
Here, and right here. Some of them I did overlap, some of them I didn't. For the render for this one, it looks like this. And then for the room, it looks like this. I rearranged some things. I fixed the bed a little bit more now that I understand it on how to use Blender. And then I made a dresser for the room. But for the window, I didn't do the back face cutting for the mirror. For the window, I did something else, which if we go here, cube, this, I used a different tool, which is called a balloon.
Boolean. We'll get to
I
that.
just
We
pressed
started talking about that last time.
and
Okay, Boolean, totally different. It's just, backface calling has to do with every face. Every face has one direction, right? And so, yeah, I need you to meet that requirement so that you can communicate to me that you know what normals are.
it was very useful. I was able to learn this last time, so I used it. Rendering for this one, it just looks like this.
Yeah, so here's an instance where even to cut out this window here, this worked, but this is probably way too many subdivisions because this is just a flat wall, right? Having a bunch of subdivisions along this flat surface, unless that's animating in a specific way, that's unnecessary, okay? It's not gonna crash our computer in this case because it's not at a scale where it would matter. But if this were a thing where the scene had 1,000 rooms in it, and that was what the room looked like, that was what the wall looked like in the room, then it would start to matter.
A lot of squares, a lot of shapes. Basic. And then for the rendering for this one, it looks like this. I don't have any other.
So, and again, the other part of doing the room with the backface calling was that we were creating a enclosed room, which mattered for what about rendering matters there? What is the rendering phenomenon or rendering technique that matters once we, what's that? Yes, global illumination, right? Global illumination is complicated, but for right now, when you check that box, we're starting to engage with the idea that photons bounce, right? Light consists of photons, right? You can think of them as just tiny glowy ping pong balls, I guess, as a way to, in this instance, right? And by default in the computer, they do not bounce. They just hit something and die. In the real world, that is not the case. They more or less infinitely bounce all over the place. But infinite bouncing all over the place sounds computationally expensive. And so global illumination is a way to sort of approximate that. And so when you make the room like Bree did and like Celeste did, and there's two missing walls in it, then that matters for the global illumination calculation. Okay. Now, global illumination is a trait of realistic scenes. If we're not making a realistic scene, right, we're going to apply some sort of stylized shading to everything, then you may not even be using global illumination, right? But if you're interested in making something that has more nuanced lighting, more quote-unquote realistic lighting, then not only does checking, because turning on global illumination is trivial. You check the box that we talked about, right? There's a lot of settings we haven't really gotten into, but the default settings are usable. But remember, when I was explaining global illumination, global blah, 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 our alarm didn't go off this morning, so it's like, oof, rough. Global illumination, remember, it didn't make much of a difference in the outdoor scene. Remember that example I showed you, right? I clicked it on and off in the indoor scene, and it was like, ooh, that's way better, right? I turned it on and off in the outdoor scene, it didn't matter. Why? There's no stuff for it to bounce off of. The light from the sunlight hits the tree and then bounces off the tree into oblivion, right? In real life, that's not the case. There's like the atmosphere, it's getting absorbed by the atmosphere, there's other stuff, right? But in the computer, where it's this sort of more contained thing, it just bounces off and then that's it. It doesn't react to the rest of the scene in any way. So those, as I'm making my case, for you to implement the project as described. Okay, good progress there, Celeste.
Hi, I'm Diana, and this is
Diana.
the indoor scene. And now it's red, but you can see inside.
Yep, okay, so she's got her, it's all red from the outside, as in this case, good, right? Because it's not her building, it's the room scene. And we get this shading here in the corners, right? This is a hallmark of the global illumination being on because the photons get trapped, I'm not sure if that's metaphorically correct, in the corner. And so there's no, it ends up getting this darkness here, right? This sort of shading that's kind of separate from the actual shadowing. And then over here, right, what are all these speckles called? It's noise, right? And so this is, like we're checking the box on global illumination, but it's an approximation of global illumination. And one of the ways that we can make it faster to approximate it is with this, mathematically easier, less rigorous calculation. And that mathematically easier calculation often results in noise like this, okay? We'll talk about denoising, which is the process for getting rid of noise in a bit. But yeah, this is another sign. When you just use the global illumination with the default settings, you'll see that there'll be some noise there. I, too, don't want there to be noise in the renders under most instances, but we're getting there.
I rebuilt the desk, the chair, and the candle. This time, the candle does not look as weird as it did last time. And then I also add these planks around the holes of the walls and then this door, and then I also added this carpet. Oh my God, it's so weird to get these angles. This carpet, and then I painted the walls pink, and then this is the angle I chose because like you can just see everything from this angle. And then the back face coloring is red because the inside of the cube is now outside, and the back face coloring makes it so you can see through the inside, which is outside now.
Exactly.
And
Well done.
And then let me remember the image.
Yeah, very nice. Nice little glow over there coming in through the window, coming in through the door. Very subtle change in color across the surface. This is the result of global illumination, right? We can have these subtle changes in hue and color across the surface. Well done. I don't know why this happens. That's probably a checkbox somewhere that shouldn't be happening, but yeah, as if there's no break there. I'm not quite sure why the global illumination does that.
Would that be just with sun as light, or is there an additional point light?
She has a sunlight, and then I don't know if she put a light where the candle is or not. I don't see one in her outliner, but let's see. No, I mean, I think that's from the sun. That is from the sunlight being on the outside. But yeah, that's just something about the global illumination calculation is probably not properly.
No, it's just
Yeah.
about it wasn't about the scattered light. I just meant that she's achieving that dramatic effect with just the sun.
Yeah, yeah. Like I don't think she has any other lights in the scene, right? Right. That's global illumination allows you to do that, right? You can light the whole. Right. In day-to-day life, you often walk into a room with a window that has no other lights on, and because the light is bouncing around the room, it is naturally lit, and in some cases, lit enough to be fine, right? Creating that natural, ambient, warm light without global illumination in computer graphics can be difficult. It requires setting up a bunch of bounce lights and other stuff, and so yeah, that's part of the value proposition of global illumination. It's like now we're getting even closer, sort of beyond WYSIWYG. It's like we're getting this environment even closer to the real world environment, right? If this functioned exactly like the real world, then all of your life experience would be able to be applied here without a bunch of translation, right? But computationally, the real world is expensive. And so it's been a continuous process over the history of computer graphics to get closer and closer to that, right? I mean, I talk about this. There's another render engine, right? And so what render engine are we using right now? Eevee, right? And this is just the name for the real-time render engine in Blender. And there's another one, which I specifically told you not to use yet, called Cycles, right? My point here is that there's a separation between the authoring environment and then the rendering technology. These are two separate things. In this case, Blender has two of them built in, ready to go. But these can be totally separate things, okay? Like you download it could be a separate application. You download a separate thing that adds another render engine to the program. You just output the raw geometry from Blender and you load it into something else to render, right? They can be completely separated. This is, when I explain this, the metaphor I use often is like the web. There's the HTML, which is the raw content, the actual words and the formatting of those words. And there's the CSS, the cascading style sheets, which controls like the styling of those words. The complete separation between the core content and then the styling of the content. And the same thing here between Blender and the render engines, right? And so my point here, getting to the idea about the real world, is that there's a separate render engine called Octane that is popular. You might see people talk about it online, that you can use in Blender or any other 3D program for the most part. And yeah, Octane is a well-hyped marketing company that does something along the lines of what's happening in Cycles there. But the person who's the CEO of Octane, Jules, I want to get his last name correct. Urbach, Jules Urbach. Yeah, he makes no bones about it. Like he sees their work on the render engine as being the first step, or like first two steps towards the holodeck, right? For Star Trek people, the holodeck, this idea that we have a computer-generated environment that for the most part is indistinguishable from the real world, right? And there's umpteen. Sci-fi explores this topic ad nauseum, right? That everyone has their own take on whether that's going to end up being great or bad, probably both, right? But yeah, that this we are in sort of the first early days of this incremental step towards that idea, right? Especially when you start to combine this sort of super realistic rendering, and then with VR technology, and then with some as yet uninvented, generative force field technology. You can see how we it's certainly the closest it's ever been. So yeah, the main takeaway here is be aware that for right now, part of the reason we use Blender is this is all here and usable in one package. I don't have to have you guys download some other render engine, figure out how to configure it with Blender, send the data, right? Those are possible things, but obviously not great for beginners. Here, it's all put together into one environment, but be aware that these things are sort of separate steps. And especially when people start doing things at scale, like large Hollywood movies, these tend to be totally separate things, right? The famous Pixar one is Render Man? Yeah, Render Man, which is the render engine that, to my knowledge, all of the Pixar movies have been rendered with, and I believe is open source. Is that right? Like you can download it and jam it into Blender. I think it's one of those. Yeah. Okay. It's not open source. There's licenses here. Anyways, so. Should you start putting any of your energy into exploring alternative render engines at this point? Absolutely not, right? You have so much more low-hanging fruit to pick here in terms of actually, learning about 3D graphics. But just be aware that this is the landscape. These things are separated here. And Eevee, because as soon as you start to get tempted by the hyper-realistic graphics, you're just also shoveling a bunch of time into endless configuration. So until you're prepared to do that, do not. Somehow I muted her. There we go.
And this is the forest scene. This is one house. And then this is another house. This on the bottom, I just needed something to put the house on because the floor was uneven. And then this is it rendered.
That's great. Deanna's getting into actual architecture design there. She's got to build a slab in order to put her house in the middle of the woods there, right? As opposed to uneven land, right? And then, yeah, that align checkbox here can help take this to the next level. Again, over here, what does she need to do with her trees? Yeah, shade smooth or shade auto smooth in order to adjust for the faceting that's happening over there.
And then I added this little fireplace. And it's just like a triangle because I was gonna do like more shapes, but then it was super late when I was doing it. And then I added this little mountain over here. And then also made a night. The last time it was day, but now it's night with this little fireplace. It's lit on fire.
Yeah, great. And so this is that combo that works really great for right now, like putting a point light next to an object that has emission. The emission channel is on and turned up, right? Because remember, the emission channel is going to self-light. It'll light up the object itself. Once you turn on global illumination, it will cast some light into the scene, but it'll be very noisy because of the way that's calculated. And so usually supplementing that with an actual light object is better. So, and she nailed that right there. I mean, it looks like the light source is kind of like, yeah, I guess it's just that this is green. It looks fine. It looks good.
Hi, I'm Liana, and
Too
it's
many
just like a
buttons.
triangle because I was gonna do like more shapes, but then it was super late when I was doing it. And then I added this little mountain over here. And then also made a night. The last time it was day, but now it's night with this little fireplace. It's lit on fire.
Cool.
I am
Okay,
Liana,
great,
and this-
great, Deanna. Everybody, yeah, I mean, part of the, as I said before, part of the reason I put these at 8 o'clock is to encourage everybody to get some sleep. And then, yeah, you may be able to do the projects on Tuesdays at this point, but we're increasingly careening towards a point where that's not possible. So reevaluating your time management and schedule to like, what if I didn't work on it at Tuesday at 5 o'clock? What if I worked on it before that, right? Because that allows you to ask questions beforehand and obviously to, you know, devote more time, effort, and attention to it. So consider that going forward, especially as the projects get bigger. Kevin.
All right, this is assignment 3, the upgrade of the tree scene for a building, and then upgrading our building for normals. So to get over to that right away, here's the tree scene. And you'll see what I did. I have the weighted painting through these trees here. I then created a rock, and I have the weighted painting, a separate weighted painting for the rocks. And then the building that I created, you can see it has a sky bridge between the two. It's a skyscraper. And
Yeah, super cool. What is it? The Petronas Towers in Kuala Lumpur? Is that right? The one with the bridge across? You know, there's like several movies where Tom Cruise jumps off.
it has between the two buildings, there's a walkway. Looking at the grid of this, you could see that the grid is pretty simple. It's really just kind of going straight up and down with some of the windows.
So yeah, that looks great. I mean, the important information to grab from that wireframe view is perhaps the subdivisions on the trees are a little high at this point, right? Anytime, you know, when you have the camera at an angle where you're going to be rendering it from somewhere around that perspective, right? And then you look at your wireframe view and some of the stuff is turned, you know, solid or black, right? You have to ask yourself, is this like a hyper detailed part of my image? If so, then leave it be, right? That change in geometry is there so that you have the detail. In this case, it's just like this cone of the tree, right? And so, you know, again, it's not crashing the computer at this scale, but you know, it's one of the easy changes to make in that instance.
Kind of going straight up and down.
How did you did you use like a sculpt? How did you get the landscape soft, you know, differentiation?
So like this.
Yeah, because
I did exactly what
sculpt.
he said to do, which I did the smooth sculpting, and I went over into the materials
Yeah.
and did that one too. Because it was still too rough when I just did smooth shading. It was way too rough. So I went over into the materials
wherever it was, and then I did more of whatever the subdivision.
So you
Followed exactly what you said in the video.
you use the subdivision surface modifier.
Yes, that's what I use.
Yes, not in the materials, and just so everyone, yeah, like, yeah. So it's the
Subdivision surfaces, and then that made it real smooth, and I liked it. With some of
the sculpting just moves the vertices. The thing that made it smooth is the subdivision surface modifier.
Got it, yeah.
and then
I
you
just,
can play around with that a little bit.
when I
too, so-
Yeah.
subdivision, I was using I'm trying to find the equivalent of like soft selection, and the proportional thing wasn't working. It was just grabbing points and pulling them up. I didn't go to the sculpt brush.
Here, you got the windows. Then, from a rendered point of view, you can see the colors here. There is, see the trees, the cabin we had done originally in my new building. Looking at the light, can do a little shading here, etc. All right. So that brings me back to our other one, which is the house. The house, and so in the house, you'll see here it is doing normal, and it does have the back culling, which you can see as we turn around, the walls disappear, etc. I've added a few things here. Right here is a picture, which you'll see in a minute when I go color. I've added these two lamps here. I've added this walkway coming in and a step up to this raised floor, and I had to fix my raised ceiling because, or my drop ceiling, because it kept it was odd in how it was portraying. You see that again, the grid, very simple. You see everything in there. So if we're looking at this thing here, so now if I turn on the rendered version, you can see I have a picture in here of Mel Brooks. A Mel Brooks poster is on the wall. I've colored.
Did you see that movie? The documentary? It's a documentary, right? Yeah. Is it out yet or no?
Watched all of it. Yeah,
Okay,
I
all
watched like a third of it. Yeah, and it's really good.
Yeah. Does anyone else know who Mel Brooks is besides Kevin, myself, and Backpack? Okay.
I got to see him over the summer.
Oh, really?
Last summer in LA, the guy that made the movie was like interviewing him on Stray. So we watched Blazing Saddles, and then he came out for an hour and just talked.
Oh, wow. I bet that was great. Yeah. Have you guys seen Spaceballs? Has anyone seen Spaceballs? Okay.
Young Frankenstein?
Yeah.
Those are 3 movies you should see. Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, and Spaceballs. They're funny as heck. Well,
Yeah.
The producers.
There's some caveats to Blazing Saddles, but
Yeah, be ready. Be ready. Colored the floors, and I've colored the walls, etc. You can see from the light shines through. There's resonant light going through it, etc. And so I don't really have any questions. I will tell you that I'm getting used to a lot of these commands. They are not simple all the time to remember, and I have to constantly look them up, but I am getting there. The anchoring of the trees, I messed that up so that they're all laying down, so I had to fix all that and go back and fix that up. But I don't really have any questions. I'm looking forward to doing some lighting, beveling some of these edges, which we just learned. That'll be good. Beveling some of these floor edges here. I think that's going to be good to add in the next project. Anyway, I did enjoy this project quite a bit, and it was a lot of fun to do. Anyway, and as you could tell, I'm messing around with OBS too. Got my name on there, my picture, and some different backgrounds. Anyway.
yeah, you're gonna have your own streaming setup and Twitch channel here before the end of the semester.
That blue background,
Yeah.
I finally figured out how I got it. So in Apple, there's a thing where I can turn on the regular background, blue, black, whatever.
Oh.
On the Apple Mac.
Oh,
So
okay. Awesome.
It took me an hour to find that. But I had to do that. I was like, because you intrigued me by asking me why is it blue, so I had to go find out why it was blue.
Yeah. I just thought you were outside.
Like this guy, yeah, it looked like
Hello everyone, this is Tanner McMillan doing my week 3 assignment. Yes. Alright, I have my interior and forest scene. My forest scene, I added 2 new buildings, 3 new buildings. 2 like kind of apartment complex or industrial buildings and a gas station. I used the extrude thing to create windows and like entranceways, like doors, for all 3 of the buildings. My cabin, I added a door to it and changed the logs a little bit, and then I kind of added a textured roof to the like tower thing. I also went back and revised some of these trees, but I'm kind of at the point where I would have to redo all of them because a lot of them are older. I added like a wooden base using the edit mode with the material. And made a couple different rocks with the subdivide tool. So yeah. And so for the interior, my interior, I have the windows cut out of both of the sides of the room. I also added a like a frame to them. I just thought it looked better than the cut out holes in the plane.
Yeah, that's fine, and that's going to give you that window shadow coming in there. That's fine. Just don't put a glass plane.
So, and then I made some books for my bookshelf and like a beanbag chair out of an icosphere using the
Okay, good. This the lumpiness of this beanbag chair helps us learn something about the subdivision surface modifier. Is that, especially when you're using the subdivision surface modifier is designed to work primarily with all quads, right? It works best with quads. Why? Because subdividing a quad is easy peasy. 1, 2, 1 face becomes 4, right? When we start to have n-gons, right? How many faces in an n-gon, or how many sides in an n-gon? Not more than 4, right? And so some unknown n number, right? And so once we get to 5 here, how do we subdivide this? Well, we could draw a line from over to here, and that's going to give us 4, and then maybe 3 over here. Or we could draw from here to here. That is not clear. There's more than one answer. The computer, and you don't get to, unless you go in and edit the geometry specifically, the computer is doing this, what ends up being arbitrarily, right? It's not random, but like it's arbitrary. And so this ends up being in a situation where we have not a great, not great topology. And so here, you had the right idea. Let's use a sphere and then mush that around, add the subdivision surface to make it a beanbag. Correct, you just picked the wrong sphere because the icosphere is made of all tris, right? It's for a different purpose. And so that's going to end up with this sort of lumpier result there. Okay, but well done. I'm just using this as a teaching opportunity, Tanner. I mean, this was not all obvious to you. This looks good.
What's it called? Extrude. I sunk the faces of the icosphere down in and flattened the bottom, and I think it looks pretty okay. The other thing was the for the interior, the what's it called? Where's it? Oh yeah, the backface cooling. The backface cooling is really useful for this. It's very useful to see, all angles of a room, despite the fact that these shapes are like, or it's nice to see through the plane be able to like know kind of what you're working with, to see how close things are to the wall and things like that. It's very nice to be able to kind of see where those intersect, and so yeah, I'm glad to know that now, because I remember last week I was like trying to work on things through the walls, and
Okay, that's true, right? It does make it easier here, but I mean, in terms of being able to work on it and just place things, I mean, going into X-ray mode or wireframe mode allows you to do those things, right? The backface calling situation here is more about, you know, the render, the view, the sort of flexibility of camera placement here. In terms of like you actually working on stuff, at any point you can see through the geometry that you have just by going to wireframe mode. And you should. If you don't find yourself going to wireframe mode for precise changes or to investigate the specific topology, you should get into that habit. Okay, looks good. Looks good, Tanner. You got things happening there.
Good morning, class. If you hear any water trickling in the background, that's just my fish tank, but here is my updated indoor and outdoor scenes. First, I'm going to start with the forest scene. This guy was a little hard just because I was struggling to figure out how I was going to place, sorry, let me get a camera view. I was struggling to figure out how to add in the rocks as well as with the trees. So that took a bit of time, as well as using the weight paint tool, but I eventually got it figured out. Let me.
So what did you do? Yeah.
So I felt like I was like overdoing it too much in some areas, so I didn't want them like around the building or the trees. So then I kind of Googled like how to get rid of it, because I didn't want to like backspace all the way. And so I just changed the weight paint to 0, and I went over the parts I wanted the trees removed or like the red spots removed.
Mm-hmm.
And it lined up to blue.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I did to fix it.
Right. Okay. So, but did you use the same scatter for the rocks and the trees?
No.
Okay. You used 2 different scatters. Yep. Okay. Which is what Kevin did as well, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, the scale here matters, right? Clearly, if you're going to have this density of trees, using the weight paint with everything else makes sense, right? If you're just going to have a handful of rocks, right, you have to ask yourself, like, well, does it make sense to use, is the proceduralness of the scatter on surface worth it, right, in terms of doing this? Or can I just Alt-D or Shift-D the rocks and place them where I need them, right? So there's always a trade-off.
Fix this here. And this.
So with the rocks, since they are separate scatter on surface, because the rock doesn't have the obvious directionality that the tree does, right? We don't want some trees facing upside down, right? Here you can turn up that random rotation in order to get the rocks to have different orientations, right? And so if you made the random range like 360, then some of them, they would all be facing in slightly different directions, which would make it seem, you could take one rock and make it look like a bunch of different rocks.
This is kind of like a 360 of my buildings. This is loosely inspired by Fairly Odd Parents. So I don't know, when I was looking at this, I thought, oh, that looks familiar. So this reminded me of Timmy. And then so I decided to make my buildings pink and green for Cosmo and Wanda. It's stupid, but
From what? Fairly Odd Parents? Okay, I don't know that one. Okay.
I thought it was funny. And then for my next item or scene, I did a bathroom, and I probably put a lot more work into this one than I did my outdoor scene. And I was struggling a little bit because I had to remake my shower as well as the mirror, because I kept getting like these red reflections. I'm not sure if I can pull it up. So I put another object in front of this just so I can cover it, but I kept getting this red reflection, so I didn't know if this was going to render. And I guess I could have looked, but I didn't check until the end, and I realized it did render. But I was kind of worried that this was also inside out. Let me see here. And then I made these all from the same objects except for the cabinets. I did that separately. And this I use the extrude and I forgot the other one was called. I used that one as well. And then I added a shower handle here. And then when I go to my render view, this is how it looks like with the sunlight. And I believe this is the angle I chose. I made the actual floors and the walls a little reflective just because I don't really, I feel like that's what would be a good thing for a bathroom. Especially if like it had like tile or something. But I didn't know how to add tile, so that's what I ended up going with. Let me see. And then the full render of this one looks like this. So then this is when I realized like, oh, okay, I could still see the panels of the shower. Because I was a little worried that since it was red, it wasn't going to show, but it ended up showing after all. And then I made this mirror a little reflective, nothing too crazy, but I think it could be a little bit better. But yeah, that is both of my scenes. The only thing I really struggled with in regards to this one was probably just the oh my god, I'm blanking on what I'm gonna say. The only thing I struggled with was just trying to figure out how to get the scenes to run with the red selection, but I was able to figure it out. So yeah, those are both of my scenes.
Okay, great. Yeah, the shower, we can look at that. I mean, in the render here, the shower walls did render. I mean, how did you make the shower stall?
I just used a cube, and then I used, I don't know what these things are called.
Inset and extrude in order to bring in the sides? Yeah.
And then I deleted the base from that front half just so that it's open.
Okay, like right, oh, over here. Yeah, yeah, okay. So yeah, and this one ended up being the back face of it, but remember, in the render, the back face culling is per material, right? So hence, we're able to see through the walls because the walls had a different material than the shower, right? And so that works there. Okay, good. Well done. I like the scene. Again, you have that big hill, so that rotation, orientation should help that scene. Max?
Alright, what's going on, everybody? Gonna show you my two renders today. I'm gonna start out with my forest one. Start off just showing you my weight paint. I did this for trees, got a couple different trees, and then the rocks too, 2 different rocks.
Cool, great. And so this idea that we can paint where things are, if you poke around on the internet, this is, I mean, the direct driveness of this makes a lot of sense. There's this is not a Blender specific idea. This is sort of a ubiquitous idea, like what is the thing called in Unreal Engine? Starts with a P. It'll come back to me. Anyways, they just released a whole new thing that does a lot of this kind of stuff. And so, the idea that here, especially for those of you into games, like here we're painting it, quote unquote, by hand. But this idea of having areas of less density and areas, or more density and less density, you could generate that using noise. And so you could generate infinite landscapes, right? So a lot of games that have procedurally generated locations, the big example here being No Man's Sky, which, claims to have whatever, like 10,000 planets, individual planets in the game. Those were not, they don't have people in a factory making 10,000 planets. They're generating variations of planet by planet by planet to some extent using, computer generated ways to make the noise that then instantiates things across the surface.
Other than that, we made the new buildings. I chose kind of a weird color, honestly, but they don't really belong in the forest anyway. But I use this using.
Yeah, really nice composition. The thing here with just from an artistic standpoint, just get away from this idea of taking a picture of leaves or a picture of grass and putting it on there as a way to make grass. Like, there's other ways to go about that. You did the thing with the particles, like just table that sentiment for right now. Like in terms of it being artistically viable, especially given the, sort of like the level of our skills at this point, right? Where we're not making like hyper realistic buildings. I think it's much better to just make this like green rather than like the picture of grass, right? Especially with grass, like a picture of grass never ends up looking like three-dimensional grass, right? It's like this flattened version of it, right? So
cubes, scaling them up.
but I really like the composition here in terms of you communicated a much bigger scale on your plane by grouping the trees, scaling the trees, and then, the buildings look proportional to the trees in that, they're taller, and then you sort of group them here. So,
extrude, inset, cut out some windows, just different colors for, faces on the inside of them. This building down here was, I don't know, I took too much time on that, honestly. It doesn't really fit in. But then other than that, I remodeled my log cabin. Since I was doing the buildings, I chose to just make a little chimney stack, kind of using the same techniques. But I just pretty much remade a different cabin anyway. Added some textures. And then I adjusted the scale too. I made the trees a lot taller than the cabin. Before it was a little, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. But yeah, that's my forest one. And then the other one we did was the back face coal. This one was the cube that we made, which is closed but also open on the inside, and you can see from any angle depending on your perspective, but it is like a closed cube, and the normals are flipped. And then I guess speaking of the normals being flipped, I think that's what happened when I was remodeling my base from last project. I think that these got flipped somehow, but it still showed up in the render, so I didn't mess with the same.
right. And why did it show up in the render?
Because it has a different material than the actual cube.
Exactly.
thing here. I was using the bevel on. It's a new object too.
And the backface calling for the viewport is the whole thing. The backface calling for the render is per material. This is another important mental note. Often the settings for the viewport and the settings for the render are separate, right? Because, as you're all understanding now, the environment you want while you're working is often different than what you want to see as the final output. Hence, at first it seems like a pain in the ass because you're like, I got to click everything twice. But as you do more of this, it makes more sense because you're able to like separate those two things.
It was just some lug nuts for cars. Use the Boolean modifier, it worked this time. But yeah, that kind of the same thing. I think the normals are like flipped or something. But yeah, this one was a skull that I just remodeled kind of from scratch. Got some different textures on it. Got some little gems on the top. It was supposed to be gems. But yeah, this one I ended up doing like a little animation for because I filmed it before, but I forgot that you had to have a different resolution size or aspect ratio size. So it's my wireframe one too.
Yep.
Oh, guess can't see. Should have thought about that. Yeah, this one was another one I effed it up with the zoom. It's alright. I guess I can show you my actual render. Came out a little weird just because of the size of it. But yeah, I had the outside too, the sky texture as well. And then the sun on the outside coming in. I had to do a couple lights. I felt like this one had to be in the light just because it looked weird in shadow. But yeah, that's about it.
Cool. I appreciate the large bug alien head thing. That's cool. Is that a specific bug alien?
He's kind of just like an alien that I draw in
ERT?
ERB.
ERB. Okay. That was Max. Max, well done.
I guess real quick question. The lug nuts from the last one. You saw how it had like the tiny little triangles that were red too. Those are normals that are flipped as well. Because I think with that one.
Alright, what's going on, everybody? Oh, shut up.
Like messed up there. I think I just cranked it out too much.
Here?
Not the black cylinders in the other corner. I think you gotta go to where it's like
Oh, that's not, you didn't try to do that on the material. That's a result of the inverted normals.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's The bevel is one way to round the corners. We talked about why we want to have rounded corners, but if the geometry is very dense or not well organized, then yeah, the bevel can create these spiky results there. I'll go over that some more as we look at this here. Okay. But that shouldn't have shown up in the render.
No, it didn't.
Okay, good. Yeah. Good question. Sean.
This is my outdoor blend here.
All right. Sean's got the Friday night voice. Here, let's turn this up.
Started off with this building right here. I threw it together. Started with a cube, and mostly my intention was just to have fun with it. As you can see, it ended up giving me a lot of topography to work with.
Yeah, so yeah, you got some internal geometry inside of this that, not ideal, but
But I'm pretty happy with how the final product turned out. This building here was my second building, so I tried to make it more of something, if that makes sense. And I paid more attention to uniformity and the windows, and after I completed this is kind of when I played around with the coloring and stuff like that, but overall this is my outdoor blend, and I'm pretty happy with it. I kind of am starting to feel comfortable and I know what I'm doing a little bit, so yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we're what was this, week 4? So everybody's.
Yeah, there's that one. Here's my. As you can see, it's got a lot of intrude and extrude, just to kind of give it some volume and
Inset and
stuff. I actually was gonna play around with shading it smooth, and I forgot to do that. So.
Yeah. In this case, good, because this is a fairly boxy thing. If you were to just click default shade smooth on this, it would kind of make the shape not look correct. So
I added these tortoises on the bottom just to kind of give it some legs, some lips, to give it a little bit more reality, I guess. Over here is this dresser. Simply started as a cube once again, and then I kind of turned it into something else. The TV here started off as just this base right here, this rectangle. I used the inset tool and stuff like that to give it some new topography to turn it into what you see it as now. My biggest struggle with this, honestly, was trying to set the lighting right for the render, and it still quite wasn't what I wanted it to be, but
yeah, I'm not sure if you've got you got to go to your render settings and click yeah, you don't. You got to check this box. So you're not getting any light bouncing right now. And then also having the light, rotating the sunlight so that the light goes down into the room rather than just across probably will yield a better.
that's okay. Once again,
which it looks like it's doing there. That's confusing.
I'm getting better with each thing I do, and I'm excited to continue to learn. Oh, I forgot to throw my renders in with my OBS video, so I'm gonna have to edit this in, but this is my render of my outdoor blend. I chose this angle because it was the only one that I could find that got this house in it and my log cabin. while still displaying some of the other things that I worked on. So there's that one, and this one here. I just tried to get a good showing of the lights and the objects, but the lighting on the inside of the room didn't come through the windows.
Okay, it looks like, I mean, you have that darkening in the edge, so I think you did click the box here at some point. But, I mean, the main thing here is just turning up the intensity of the light. Seems to be like your first thing to do here. And then changing the rotation on the sunlight so that
as much as I wanted it.
sort of goes down into the room.
Yeah, once again, I just kind of chose this angle because I was trying to show everything. But yeah, that's all.
Cool. All right, good job, Sean. Let me turn this down because it's going to be super loud. There we go. Getting there. Here's backpack.
Okay, I'm gonna try this one more time. This is my New York landscape, the landscape scene. There's a walkway in New York City that's built on old railroad tracks, and there are these brownstones beneath it, so having problems scrolling into the viewport. This is a reference photo of what that looks like in New York, and behind here is, it's not supposed to be a background, it's just another reference photo that I'm using. It's picture plane. I really had a lot of trouble with the scatter on surface for the upper roadway. I did finally get the weight painting to work on this surface, but when I...
Okay, so, I mean, just in general, this doesn't look like a great candidate for scatter on surface. You know what I mean? It's like 4 trees. I would just duplicate the trees.
No, I finally ended up doing a tree in an array.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't get them to... Why wouldn't it be a good candidate?
Well, there's just 4 trees, like the scatter on, like...
The scatter was supposed to fill the whole road.
Oh, you wanted more trees here?
Yes.
Okay.
Duplicated bushes and trees, they seem to still link to the one below. So when I wanted to scatter on surface on the upper roadway, they were hanging upside down, hanging from the beams. I took off the randomizer, and then that affected the bottom one, so somehow they're being linked. I don't like that at all. Just don't like that. So now I'm going to go to the space pod, which I had a terrible problem with getting the materials to stick to the pod.
You did get this?
I just did it now, and I don't know. So the backface culling is in the material setting as well as viewport. The one in the material setting has 3 options.
Uh-huh.
What are you supposed to check? It's like, it says backface culling material to camera, to It's in the material, so it was to camera, shadow, or light probe volume.
Camera.
In the material properties. I don't know if that's changed.
Camera. Like when I did the example in class, it was camera. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the camera is like, the view we're rendering from, the camera.
I'm not really sure what changed. So, yeah. A couple of days ago, I realized that all the normals were bad on the original pod, and as Casey will tell you, there's no point fixing it. And I really couldn't get away with it for this assignment because the whole assignment was about normals and about being able to see inside when you have to flip the normal. So I corrected the pod, and yet it still won't take any materials. Can't get it to take materials. This inside view of the capsule, I was able to select some of these inset surfaces. I made these trusses by poking the quad and inset and then extrude inward on the pod. But so I was able to select that. But then when I went to select this hatch door, I don't know if it's because it's a child of the pod, of the capsule, but I could not put a material on that. And when I tried to, it would override, even the selection in edit mode would override the whole the whole pod. So yeah, that's the problem. I liked using the tube modifier. This was just kind of a real difficulty. And ideally I wanted to put in a grid floor and have some pipes running through it, because I love pipes and I love this, but that's going to be it. It's just frustrating with the whole gizmo. You might have seen a post I put on Discord. The gizmo was all skewy. I took the pod and put it into another file, tried to reset the gizmo, but I couldn't grab the gizmo even with the, this origin thing. It just wasn't happening. Okay, that's it.
Okay, let's see here. Okay. Okay, the door here, right? So this is one mesh. I'm going to press slash just to look at that. Okay, and so this is the main thing, and then this. I'm not sure what these are.
So I had to join the doors and the pod, but in order to just get them, manipulate them all.
Oh, these here.
Pretty bad decision, but
I mean, this is not joined. These are,
those aren't joined.
yeah.
I tried to just parent-child them.
Yeah, you did. They are parent-child, and so this, if I slash in here like this, I mean, this seems like a reasonable anchor point for this.
Yeah, I did get it, but I had to do it on each one individually. I just expected to make one and then copy it, make 6 of them, not an array, just make 6, and they all had.
So if I grab this and go get the whole hierarchy here, just for the sake of Control C, Control N, Control N, N, N. There we go. Okay, so there it's just in. Okay, so I've got this, right? And so if I select the hierarchy, select it, make sure I have this stuff on. There we go. All right, so make sure it's in local. All right, so the anchor point is where you set it. And so if I duplicate the entire thing, Shift D, and move it over, like it has this one, this one. Yeah, the anchor point is there. It's, the anchor point should stay where it is. You can only adjust the anchor point for one thing at a time, right? And so, I mean, how is that different from what you were doing?
The file in that, which shows when I did that, I took it and put it into another file. That's where I was trying to demonstrate how I couldn't, the gizmo was off.
Mm-hmm.
It was just got whack, and I really couldn't fix the gizmo independently. And when I tried to, with the checking the apply origin and checking the box to make it move independently, 2 doors were moving. That nothing is supposed to move
Mm-hmm.
when you're just working with only the axis. So that would be in that bad file. But this obviously finally worked, but I didn't get it to that point when I was setting it up inside the capsule.
Okay, so if I move the origin on
Well, it seems it works now.
here,
It's always that way.
we're good. Where
So the
is...
doors, okay, so the doors, I wanted the origin to be where they hinge. So I think that's maybe was setting up a problem because they're joined.
Yeah.
That's maybe the problem. So
Yeah, so a door would, like any door that you want to open, you would not join that, right? It needs to have the anchor point on the side, and then in order to animate separately, independently.
That's where I went wrong. I joined it, and then I tried to edit the door, put the.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you just joined and parented the wrong stuff here, right?
Yeah.
This pipe, the mattress, those things probably don't move relative to this Whereas the door, you would probably want to do that. And so you'd want to parent this and join this, this, and this. Yeah, so that's the main issue there.
It became really obvious if you looked at the whole file when I made the 3 in this row, and then I needed to do the 3 in that row, and now I could use mirror, but I had no mirror. So
Okay, I'm gonna.
to turn them that way and then turn them around.
Mm-hmm.
Upside down, then turn them around. That's when all the doors were going in different directions.
Yeah, and then let's just look at the.
It's somehow fixed, because I just had to fix it. I had to redo it.
And then over here, you couldn't this is the other one that was confused. So here's, yeah, I don't know where this is over here. So this is now, Backpack's got a lot of stuff over here. So this is where that period or decimal point, I'll refer to the one on the right as the decimal point. I'll try to refer to the one on the left as the period. The decimal point comes in handy. I select this, come over here, press decimal point, and so that takes me to hatch door. And so if I put some sort of material on the door, I can apply that there. Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay, maybe I was just because it seemed like whatever I did to adjust the door, so maybe add more metallic, it seemed like the whole capsule was changing. But I think it's just the effect in the viewport that everything kind of like readjusts while you're doing it.
can't seem to click on this.
Yeah. But I seem to be able to do it now.
Okay. Okay, we got to some of it there.
So, yeah, but yeah, I think so.
Kate.
Hello, my name is Kate, and this is
Kate.
my outdoor scene and my new buildings. So I kind of made a type of skyscraper with bit of a brown windows to kind of make it look more interesting. And then I also made kind of this really strange blue house. I also decided to go in and add a little bit of the rotation to the cabin and to get rid of an old texture that I had, just because I thought it made it look too dark for some of the details to be seen.
Okay, so here's a good example. Kate, looks like you probably shade smoothed the cylinders here, which created this kind of weird shading where this is like super dark, even though it's not in shadow, and this is brighter, right? And so this, as we'll do here in a second, can be addressed by beveling the end of the cylinder so that we can have shade smooth, but not have the shade smooth is gonna, if you just apply shade smooth to something that has a right angle, it's just gonna kind of like obliterate that angle in the shading. And so this is where the importance of rounded corners that I talked about at length on Monday comes in.
This is how it looks in wire view. As you can see, I did a bunch of cutting for the windows just to kind of make them look like they were like protruding out.
Yeah, nice job there. Not just the inset and extrude, you did a couple extra steps to give it the frame.
And also
that also created extra topology, geometry, which allowed you to then texture the frame different from the window, different from the building, which we all
over here. For the blue house, it's the same. I did it with the door as well. I just attached a circle for the doorknob. I did make sure that there was no trees inside and that some of the rocks were also scattered around. Let me see. I decided to go for this camera angle because it just lets me see both the plane and how it's really dynamic. Also lets me get a view of these two buildings, and it still keeps the cabin in view. And fully rendered, it looks like this from the camera. And do I need to do anything else with this? Okay, I'm gonna move to the indoor scene. So this is my indoor scene. As you can see, here's the
skylight. Nice application of the technique. Yes.
How do you get the red to go away in
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not like that. Maybe where it's clear. Like in the solid view, the wall disappears when you're looking at it.
Uh-huh.
How do you do that so the wall disappears when I'm in that render view? Not the render, but the render view.
You have to have the backface culling on in the material.
Yeah, I did that on so I tried that. But it's still not, it made like a red veil. I can see through, but it doesn't disappear like hers is gone.
Uh-huh.
Right? And I can see she's in that render view, right?
Uh-huh.
I can't get mine to do that. Mine still shows red. I don't know why. We can talk later.
Yeah, let's look. I mean, I think because people are
off the red stuff because you said that it was turned off normally, so you had to turn it on. So I just turned it back off.
okay. That's probably it. So this is a diagnostic tool, right? So like that. This turns it red. Try just unchecking that and see if that affects.
What was that?
That's under this one, which is called Viewport Overlays, the one closest to the X-ray button.
What's it called? The backface culling. I kind of did all these cuts just.
You got a hole in the floor. That's pretty cool. And you got light coming up from the floor.
Yeah, because I still wanted to keep the purple, like the blue, but I was like, I guess I was just gonna have to do it on the floor.
Yeah.
For all
You
the-
wanted to create this more blue light within the scene?
Yeah, I just really like how like the blue and mainly like the pink interact.
Yeah, you got some really nuanced interaction.
Different colors that I had before. And I did turn on the shadow to make them look more interesting. My new items are the sink, the table, and 2 pieces of toast. As you can see, I just decided to make my piñata thing a little smaller, just to make it look a little more lived in. And here's how it looks from the camera angle. I struggled a bit because I did want these other faces to be seen, but I settled for this one just to kind of keep everything in the middle. And how it looks when it's finished rendering is like this. The green light actually came out a little bit more, but I'm fine with that. And I don't have any more questions. Yeah, those are my two scenes.
Great. These look very good, Kate. Well done. Yeah, you have the same tree facing issue. Everybody should be able to address that this week. Yeah, the align. Yeah, turning off the align. Yeah. And well done.
Hello, my name is Adrian Aguila, and this is my render of my manipulating geometry assignment. Here's the room again, more improved. I reconstructed the room with a cube, and did the I inverted it the normals of the outside to the inside, and I did basically what's it called back culling. I think, is it back culling?
Back.
I know it's around here, sorry. Oh yeah, it's over here. Backface culling, yeah. We got, we were able to color the vase, we got a candle, and we got some little benches.
And a lone cheeseburger right there. Is that from, did you watch that cheeseburger tutorial?
No, I just got it from Blender Kit.
Okay, that's from
I don't know, benches, stools. And I changed the difference with this one. Nothing much, just changed up the area with the box. What's it called? Yeah, like a box. Nothing much, exactly. Now let's move on to the next one. Alright, and here is my forest. I made it more into like a plain a little bit. I added some rocks. I changed the huts into a building, which I'm honestly very proud of because I was able to color each specific like face on the building, like the doors and the windows, and a dark blue looking awesome paint job on the building. The rocks they're basically cubes but with a subsurface subdivision surface. And then I used sculpting to pull it a little bit, to deform it a little bit to make it look more like a rock. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so that started as a cube. Okay, so I did 2 levels of that here, right? So you're just deforming the original 8 vertices on the cube. You want more vertices than that for this, right? Because it still ended up looking pretty blocky. We wanted something smoother, so it needs, if you turn this up to 2 or 3, then it would look more smooth there. But having something beyond just the original vertices of the cube gives you more to do in terms of changing the shape there.
Looks like my GPU is going a little slow. That's fine. There you go. And I'll change a bit the grass. Yeah, y'all enjoyed the other grass, but since it's not my own creation, I decided to change it. I'm sorry, by the way. I picked this different green because it looks nice for grass. It's not too dark, but not too bright. And yeah, sorry if this video isn't that much interesting. It's just the basics, basically, like, ooh, a nice building, stuff like that. The reason I didn't do like a cabin is because last time I got it confused with like how to make a cabin with logs. I was like, when this Wednesday was it this Wednesday? No, it was last Wednesday, sorry. Last Wednesday when y'all were showing your little cabins, I was like, wow, I did not know that. Whoops. My mistake, basically. Sorry about that.
Okay, we got this week to get caught up and do the cabin. Awesome. Okay, you're on your way there. Yes?
I was just going to mention these rocks.
Uh-huh.
They look like,
Faceted, yeah.
instead of like a rock.
Yeah. Yeah, just not enough vertices in your initial thing before the modifier was applied, right? If you turn off the modifier, it probably looks just like a cube, right? Whereas here, let me just we'll do Isaac's here, and then let me show you a scene which I think will help everybody understand the power of the subsurface modifier.
Hello everyone, my name is Isaac and this is my submission for the week 3 assignment, starting off with our rendered images. Nothing changed about the camera angle for this one, but I did change the weight painting for the trees so that they wouldn't obstruct the A cabin building. And I also added in a water closet with its own window and a wood, or I guess like a wood storage next to it for my 2 buildings.
Do you want to store your wood next to the outhouse? I don't know.
And for my indoor model, I decided to move the angle a bit so that it can better see the back face culling effect. The new assets that I put in were the window, the TV, and a little controller at the top of the roof. Onto our forest scene here, just to make sure that our person has absolute privacy. Here is the 4 walls, just to make sure nobody's cheating. So surely nobody would remove the wall and just not put anything there, right? Right? But yeah, that's the all 4 corners are there. There's the window. There's the window. There's not really an outhouse in there, or I guess toilet seat. Would it just be an outhouse hole or toilet seat? I don't know.
Yeah, there's lots of discussion.
And on to our indoor scene. Basically, here's rendered view, and to give a description, or rather demonstration, of the back face culling, it is pretty much what allows us to see inside of a flipped cube. And you might be wondering, cube, what are you talking about? This is clearly a triangle. There is a very small one side, or like a very small side of the cube that is just shrunk down so that it looks like a triangle, and I don't have to do extra work triangulating faces and trying to make all the loop cuts work. But yeah, that's how I figured that out, at least. There could be a different method, in which case...
No, that's good. In a lot of like quote-unquote triangular things, having a small quad at the point is better, usually better, than having it come to a single point or having it come to a...
I'd love to know it. And moving on, there is the new objects as well to show you guys.
Isaac's beanbag ended up being a little bit more successful here because it was we don't see it here yet, but it's probably quad based, and so the subdivision surface modifier did a better job of smoothing that.
And pretty much, I just added a TV, or modeled a small little TV for the roof, I guess, like the little roof floor up here. As well as a new controller and a wire using another Bezier curve to complement the sort of fairy lights that I have here. Other than that, no questions so far, I think. I'm understanding the concepts pretty well, and yeah, ready to get on to the next lesson.
Okay, great. All right, we're doing great here. It's going to be fast and furious as we try to do a couple things here. So one of the things, yeah, as we go along here, I suppose this will be the last week. We'll continue to work on these scenes and we'll switch things up. So we're going to add a few things here, but please redo. There's stuff that we just sort of glossed over at the beginning in the interest of like doing stuff. And so now, if something about your sink or couch or whatever is preventing it from being beveled or subdivided correctly, remodel it, right? This is related to my advice that at this point, it's definitely better to redo than fix. We haven't sunk that much time into something where we need to get into the fixing because that ends up being much more intensive. So for instance, here, we are going to, based on what we know, make a better log. We're going to use, and then this better log or multiple versions of it can be used as the basis for our cabin. So for instance, let's go ahead and do the Bezier curve and work with that. So if I come in here and go curve, Bezier, tab, A, delete, just sort of clear the slate. And I'm just going to draw a line using the draw tool, kind of like so. And yeah, there we go. I get this. We want to use our modifier, our the name, which is totally escaping me at this point. Did I do something strange? I didn't. Why is tube? Am I in the wrong? Oh, I was opening up other files in Blender 4.3 opened. I need to be in Blender 5. Yeah. Sorry, I was just in the wrong version. Curve to tube is a new one. And Shift A, Bezier, there we go. Tab A, delete. There we go. Look at it from the top, make sure I draw, so that even though I'm purposely using this to not draw a perfectly straight line, right? So I'm just sort of leveraging my human inconsistency. And then here, let's get tube. There we go. All right. And so now let's turn this into a better log with some of the tools that we have. So first of all, let's manage our geometry. I want this to be a little bit thicker, more log profile. Let's look at the points here. And so drawing it by hand gives me this wobbly human inconsistency, but sometimes when you're drawing it, we end up with too many points, especially towards the end here. And so like, see how the geometry is bunched here at the end because of the default distribution. I'm going to go ahead and delete this point that's right there, and that will help. And then I can grab this point that's here and then grab one of the Bezier handles to sort of, you know, make it a little bit less regular. I have a point. How many points do I have here? I have that point. I want another point in the middle. And so I can grab these 2 points in edit mode, right click and say subdivide. That gives me another point here that I could use to just sort of make it a little bit more irregular or move it, right? So I get something that's starting to look irregular, like a log, right? Down here, yeah, I've got the same thing. How many points do we want? Just enough, right? As per usual. And so over here, get rid of that one. There we go. Now that's cleaning things up. And I want another point over on this side. So I'll grab these 2 points, right click and say subdivide, and that gives me another point here to make something a little bit more less regular. Okay, let's go back to solid view here. Right, okay, so this looks more log-like, right? But this is the issue that we discussed on Monday at length, where this is too sharp, right? And we solved this problem by beveling, right? Because if we were to just shade smooth this object in object mode, yeah, it's going to, the modifier has a thing built in to sort of save you from yourself there to keep this shade sharp. But we're not catching any light there, which we want to do. And so here we can start to stack, right? So we have our curve to tube, and then we can bevel at the end. And so now we're getting somewhere in that we have this rounding here, we have this beveling here, which is not desirable. And so we can adjust the angle. If we increase this angle here, we can end up with something to sort of round it out so we don't have the other part. Or if we had slightly more subdivisions going around the tube. And so over here under our resolution, if I push that to 9, we can have a rounded tube and end up with some beveling over there, which is going to help our tube-like performance. And so the thing I like with the tube modifier is that it's, by default, more conservative on the subdivisions. Whereas when you just make a new cylinder, the default is 32, which is in almost all instances too much. And so here, let's go up to maybe, how about 16? Remember my rule of thumb about radial subdivisions? If you're not sure, round to an even value, because then it makes changing it later doable. Okay, and so now I have something that looks better, as in terms of like a little bit irregular, like a log, right? And it's got these rounded corners. So we use the bevel and we use this. And so now this is something that could be used to construct a wall of our cabin, for instance. We could array this, right? And then use, now because they actually are different, we can use some of our randomization stuff down here in order to rotate maybe a little bit in that direction, a bunch in the rotational direction there, right? And then as I crank this up, we get variation in terms of how much we're moving it. We start to move them down, right? And so now I can get something that starts to look way more like an actual log cabin wall, right? In that these are varied, they have their individual variation here, and yeah, if we had a little bit of variation here also, right? Now, especially once we were to shade all of this, we have the original thing here. Holding down Control, now I can construct. Remember this, well, we got this big gap here. I mean, it depends on your attitude. You can just accept this as part of log cabin living, or perhaps you come down here to the seed, right? So you'll hear me rant about this throughout the semester. The computer is not random, okay? It just fakes it. It's a totally deterministic machine. It's not capable of what we experience as like randomness. It's a larger philosophical conversation to have there, but we're not going to have it right now. So what do? You get to pick your universe that you're in. Which random universe am I in with the seed, okay? And so the seed value here, dialing it up or dialing it down, the magnitude of it does not matter. What matters is its difference, right? And so this allows me to search the universe, the multiverse of random possibilities to find one that allows me to harness the power of procedural generation, but still art direct it to make sure that my log cabin doesn't have any what I would determine as unacceptable holes in the wall, right? And also decreasing the space between them may help to some extent. Because we've done this completely procedurally at this point, right? We've beveled it and done the array and done the curve like this. We can come into the original to also go back and edit the original and have that propagate up. So if you come in here and turn off some things to sort of look at the original, I can come in here and use that thickness to maybe, give this a little bit of that, give this one a little bit of that, right? And so maybe I want one more point over here, right click, subdivide, make this one a little bit thicker, or grab that one a little bit thicker, a little bit thinner, right? And then turn the modifiers back on. That propagates up into the rest, right? To make a much more interesting, again, we haven't gotten to anything bordering hyper-realism yet. We've just made much more interesting stuff. The bevel here, I might turn that up in terms of the distance of rounding. Let's see. Why is this giving me a weird... Let me just turn this off for a second. Make sure there's nothing strange in our settings. Inner bevel, profile, geometry. And let's look at the wireframe. I think it's the rotation of this point. Let's come back here to here. And I'm going to look at it directly from the top. So come in here, 7. Yeah, this using the Bezier handles can be tough. So grabbing the Bezier handle, pressing G, allows me to sort of straighten some of this out at the end. So not only the number of points, but also the orientation of the points. So it depends what you'd want to do there, whether or not you want to draw them with the tool and have it propagate like so, but this gives us something that's way more interesting. And again, in the array here under offset, we're offsetting that way. Here again, there we go. Offsetting, randomizing here allows us to, again, get more of that, naturalistic look, perhaps in this direction. And again, the seed allows us to find a version of it that works. Okay, so this is, procedural now. We can, let's say we want another wall, right? So if we Shift D this, the object, come into the object mode. If we Shift D it and move this over, right? I've got this. These walls are still exactly the same. If I change the seed on this one, I get a different wall, right? And so now that gives me something completely separate there in terms of what's happening. So we used the bevel to round the edges of the logs there, and we used the array to put them in that position. Important thing to point out here is the number of subdivisions going around the object is going to be related to our beveling that we have here. Oh, it's off. There we go. The order for the stack here matters. Let's add one more. We'll get to that next week. I want to get to a few other things here. Okay, better logs. So this is something that we can explore this time. The other place you could do this is in the tree. So let's do this so that we can apply something. So the tree that we have, we're not going to go full on leaves or anything yet, but if we go ahead and make a different basis, we can apply some of the same thing. So here, I'm going to draw another curve, mesh, tab A, delete. Okay, and start with a fairly thin line. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and subdivide it once. So I have a point in the middle to sort of work with. Okay, and let's do the same thing. We're going to give it a tube. And make this much bigger. Kind of like that. And then let's shape this a little bit. And so I'm going to bring this down to, let's say 6. Then I'm going to use the radius and grab the ends and bring those down. Right, so we can do this. Right, so it's fat in the middle, sort of thinner on the ends, right? Good, okay, and so now we're gonna do both things. We're gonna use the generative stuff here to sort of make this, right? So we use that, the tube modifier, and then we are going to convert to mesh, so then we can edit the mesh itself. And so let's do that. We are going to select this Bezier curve and then select it in object mode and convert to mesh. There we go. You'll know you've done it correctly. The name will remain Bezier curve, but the icon is not a curve. It is now a mesh. So you should probably rename it. This will be branch thing. Okay. And so now we've got a regular mesh. If I tab into edit mode, I have access to all of the stuff here. And so in edit mode here, I'm going to grab everything and sort of flatten this out a little bit, like so. And then in edit mode, I'm also going to, back in object mode, I'm going to change the anchor point to here. Well, actually, because I drew it from the middle out, my anchor point is kind of where I want it to be anyway right now. So we're pretty good there. Cool. Okay, and so now let's iterate on this concept. I'm going to, again, I want to use this as the basis for the new part of my tree. And so I'm going to add the array. Instead of a line, we're going to do a circle. And so now we have that, and we can increase this. The rotation here, I'm going to say no. Don't align that. And then on the original object, if we start to adjust it, right, I want to angle these down. And so here I'm going to do something where I go back into, I'm going to turn this off so I can understand what I'm doing. I'm going to tab into edit mode, and let's go ahead and angle this sort of down. And because I'm doing this in edit mode, when I come back out, the anchor point will still be where it was for the object. Kind of like that. So back to object and turn this back on, and there we go. And so now, in terms of the, once you change it to circle, the primary things here are radius, which kind of spreads them out or puts them together. And then, your randomization here allows you to sort of create a little bit more variety. Where's the scale? Yeah. So we can make some of them longer or shorter. And so we've got something that we can use, and depending on how many we want, we'll have some overlapping geometry here at the top, but we end up with something that's going to look, way more interesting than what we had before, right? Now we can iterate on this idea, right? So I used a procedural thing. Let's then use this multiple times. Now a line that is in this direction. There we go. And rotation allows us to get something different there. And then again, we could make a better trunk using the log technique we just did before, right? Now, is this ready for forest treatment? No, we need to turn it into one object. However, this is the procedural version, right? The leaves and the layers are by the array. And so this, in order to put it in the scatter, we need to convert to mesh, which will get rid of the arrays. And so the technique here is to save a generative version. So the easiest way to do this is just duplicate and then convert the duplicate so that you have one you can go back to. If you decide you want to do something else with the tree, you don't have to go back and redo the whole thing. You can just go back to the other one, right? So here I'll just make a quick trunk. You'll take the time to make a better trunk, but I'm pressed on time. Okay, and so here take this and shift drag it underneath branch thing. Okay. And so this will become the tree I can go back to and edit. And just make sure the scale is good on this. It is. Okay. And so here I'll shift D this, right? And then when you shift D, you got to make sure you have the whole thing selected. Shift D. There we go. And so now this one I'm going to save. And so this one will be, I'll change it to branch thing gen for generative, and then just turn it off. Okay. If I need to get back to it, I can. I could make a collection to just sort of store all of those originals in a box. Now here, I need to turn this into a singular mesh piece. And so we got a couple things we need to do here. We need to apply the modifiers. So here on this top one, I'll select this one and convert to mesh. And then select both and Control J. And so now this is the tree. And so this is something that can now go into the, once I fix the anchor point like we've done before, this can go into the scatter on surface, and we have something that looks and is way more interesting. You can make this more detailed at every step. You could have more than one, just because we know we can use multiple things in the scatter on surface. You could make multiple different trees out of this technique in terms of having these longer things. Do not use this right now to make individual leaves or individual you know, yeah, fine details, right? Branch-sized things. Okay. Yeah, so applications of all the things we learned there. In terms of the furniture, right? So the things you have like the chair, right? So we're just thinking about the rounding on everything here, right? So a lot of you made chairs, something along the lines of this, tab, Control R, and Control R, Control R. There you go. And so a lot of you made chairs going kind of like this. Actually, this is the legs, so it makes sense to extrude both of those at the same time, right? And then perhaps the back, right? And just doing part of it quickly here for time reasons, right? And so what is the solution here for rounding? When we have all quad like this, and is this sort of a man-made thing? Does it have right angles? If so, most of the time we're solving that rounded problem with bevel. And so here, the bevel deformer, or modifier, allows us to adjust this. Notice that here, actually, this will be good. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so if I look at this, let me give it some more. Let's bevel a little bit more to make it obvious. Okay, you can see that a lot of the beveling is not consistent. Why is that? Apply scale, right? The scale is like the modifier, the multiplier for how the modifier is applied. And so watch Control A scale. Now the beveling is the same. And so now things can be beveled. Let's go 2, and then let's make this look good. Let's go ahead and let's do here. Yeah, we will shade smooth. And then on man-made things, we want to check that harden normals. And so here, this should help for all of your indoor things in your scene. So using some of the tools in the outdoor scene, rounding some things in the indoor, and then the last thing here I want everybody to do is render a movie. So let's look at, I downloaded somebody's, Diana's. There we go. Okay, so this will make sure everyone has this worked out. So what do we want to do here? We want to render a movie of this sort of, go and look through our camera. Okay, camera's pretty good. Do we spin the thing, in this case the room, or the camera? And in this case, because we want the light to stay relative to the room, we are going to spin the camera. And so the easiest way to do this is make the camera a child of an empty, just an axis that is at 0, 0, 0. And then we'll spin that. Why are we doing this? Why not just spin the room? A, that's going to work if you've parented everything correctly. Everything is a child of the room. Some of you have done that, some of you haven't. And then B, you'll spin the room, but the light from the sun would stay stationary, right? And so it would be probably not what we want for most of us. So anyways, here we go. We've got the camera that Diana has in this case. And so I don't want to move that. I want to keep it where it is. I want to Shift A and make an empty, right? Which is going to be an extra axis. And there we go. And you need to make sure that it is at 0, 0, 0. I mean, this is assuming that your room is in the middle of the world. If not, this needs to be wherever your room is. I would move your room back to the middle of the world to make everything a little bit easier to handle. Okay, and so I'll call this camera rotation. Okay, now I want the camera to be a child of this. So I'll grab the camera and shift drag it underneath camera rotation. And so now with camera rotation, here's the camera object right there. There's the middle of the world. If I take camera rotation and rotate it on the Z, you'll see the camera spinning around the scene. I can't keep it highlighted while I do that. Okay, so we just need to set 2 keyframes here on this to make it work on the camera rotation. So I'll come to camera rotation here, and let's do that. Down here, right, make sure you're in layout view, and we are going to go to timeline. And not on camera rotation, it should be the Z rotation. You can simply make sure the playhead is at the beginning, 0, and click. This sets a keyframe on the rotation. We need to make sure we have an appropriate number of frames. Let's say 5 seconds. And so I'll say 5 times 24, and that should be 120 frames. That should be fine. So now I'll move my playhead to the end and set this at 359, almost the whole way around. Now, orange is telling you we have not actually committed that. You need to click here to actually make the keyframe. How do I know I have 2 keyframes? There's a diamond here and a diamond there. And so now, if I to look through the camera and then press spacebar to play, we have this spinning around. The thing that's not great here is that it speeds up and slows down. And so in this case, I think it's artistically desirable to have it spin at a constant speed. So if you grab these, you can right-click on them, and we'll talk about this more later. Interpolation linear. And so that will give you constant spinning in order to show off the entire room. How do I render this? Back over here under output, we pick some place to render it. I'll just say here for now, except then we go from media type from image to video. Under encoding, I'm going to switch to MPEG-4. And up here, yeah, make sure that I'm 24 frames per second. And so that all looks good. And now the shortcut for rendering the movie is Control F12. If your function keys are not working, you may have to press the function button to get the function key to function. So that's next to Control. Anyways, now I press Control F12, and now you'll start to understand the importance of working with all the render stuff here. It may take a second to send everything over to the GPU, but then once it does, instead of just seeing one image here, you'll see it rendering out the entire movie. Don't interrupt this process. If you close the window, you won't get the whole movie. You need to let it go through the entire thing. This shouldn't take forever, as long as you're in EV. Each of these is, like, we're still going pretty quickly here, right? It's like definitely like almost 2 frames a second, which is, as long as you're not rendering a 7-hour movie, this should be plenty fine, right?
Is this in scene or render output? Where are you creating the animation setup?
Down here, this is in layout. This has been here the whole time.
Yeah, I mean,
we're in the timeline view, right? So timeline.
Scene over there. That's where you found the video. Scene.
This is an output. Yeah, output. It's got the little printer icon. And so now if we go to that folder, that is right here, here. There it is. If you want to make it a little bit longer of a movie so it's not spinning quite as fast, that's fine as well. Again, it shouldn't be taking forever to render. And so now the light orientation to the room as it's spinning remains fixed, right? If you could add keyframes to the room and you would say, oh, I get a very similar effect. The light would then be rotating. The room would rotate and the light would not. And that would probably, you would end up with a lot of it being dark for part of the render. So for this instance, it makes more sense to do it this way, where again, it's like attaching the camera to a big thing, like an arm. We rotate the arm, right? That's what that empty is doing there in order to create this, in all of these turnaround, show-off video kind of things, that's the question. Am I rotating the camera or am I rotating the thing? And in some instances, either is doable. In our case, because we want to maintain the light, it makes sense to rotate the camera in this case. Okay. So rounded edges is going to be our focus for the week. If the bevel or the subdivision surface is not working with something, look at the geometry, and it might be time to just sort of like, let me remake this in a way that I know is going to work with these. The other thing I'll link to here is there's a really great scene from the Blender examples. So if you're not hip to this, this is somewhere. So the splash screen that shows up when you launch Blender, those are Blender files, and they're here. I'll link to it under demo files, so Blender Splash at Work. Each of these is linked and able to be downloaded here. And so this one here, this sort of like cozy, cute room here, the thing to understand with this one, it's a lot of stuff, but then also, let's make sure over here, I'm just going to turn this back to here. Give it a second. This is not a gigantically huge scene, but we can look at the individual things here, and most all of the rounding done here was done with the subdivision surface. And so there's some interesting examples here to look at. If I click on this mug, where's the mug? Well, this is a big scene with lots of organization. And so here, select the mug, come over here, press decimal point. Boom, it takes me to the mug. And now I can look at the modifier stack. What does this look like without the subdivision surface, right? And so here, with the wireframe perhaps, you can sort of see exactly what's going on with this with and without, right? How is this being rounded with each thing? And so all these files are pretty great. Some of them, check this one out, right? And so we used a similar kind of idea here with our tree, right? That tree I just made, right? That's kind of what the trees in the outside of the scene here are doing. There's a lot to check out here. Some of the other Blender scenes, splash screens can be very heavy in terms of like the render, so you may not be as great. This one's fun to explore, like what does this bread actually look like? And select the bread and look over at this, and let's see, maybe this one has applied modifiers. Yeah, there's no modifiers in it. If we just slash is going to be your friend here so that you can sort of look at that object by itself. And so, yeah, this is an instance where certainly they had the sub-D surface, but it's no longer there, which means they did the convert to mesh on this, right? And so this is less editable now than, for instance, the mug is, right? If the mug is here, if I look at this and slash into the mug and look at it over in this way, right, and come over here and press decimal point and then turn off the modifier, you can see what's going on with this, and you could manipulate some of the underlying geometry of the mug, for instance, or if we took this stuff and then we extruded it out like so, and then turn the modifier back on. There you go. You see we get this, we get that. I don't know why you'd want to have a mug like that, but I'm just making some examples here, right? But yeah, we have two levels of subdivision here, which make all these things look very, it's being used. The thing, I'm not saying you need to make art that looks like this. I'm saying that this particular artist used this idea of the subdivision surface to create this, Playmobil / smushy, curvy, look to everything very effectively. And so there's a lot to be learned from the application of the subdivision surface modifier in this scene. Also, this scene is very digestible in that you're going to be able to open it on your computer. Some of the other scenes are pretty heavy, where there's much more to decipher. Now you know enough to be able to like poke around in this scene and check out the different things that are happening, right? I think these bundt cakes, if we look at those, that's just the icing for the bundt cake. Let's look here. There we go. There's the bundt cake. There we go. And so if we turn off the subdivision surface on the bundt cake, that's actually, it's not that complicated of a thing at the end of the day, right? It's just got that, and then all of the rounding is just coming from the subdivision surface modifier, which gives us that bundt cake look to the thing. Also, the shading here has a gradient. Most of these are procedurally generated shaders. We'll get to some of that next week. So, yeah, I'll put the link to it here. Like Blender has a page where they have the downloads of all the files for all of the splash scenes. So, it's Blender download demo files. But I'll link to it. Okay, great. I'll post assignment ASAP, and lot to do this week. So keep that in mind. Try to spread out your work on this so that if you run into problems, you can ask questions early and often. Also, Fabio is available Tuesdays and Thursdays and by appointment. He's a wonderful human being who really he's sitting there ready to help you. Take advantage of that, okay? I mean, I answer the questions I can. My availability is not the same as his availability, right? I mean, there's other stuff I have to do. His job is to answer these questions for you while you're working on Tuesdays and Thursdays and by appointment. So please do that. Mm-hmm.